Today I'm making a cozy all-Italian meal of a cheesy lasagna made with a meat sauce, followed up by a salad topped with fried artichoke hearts, finished with tiramisu. And the neat thing is that I'm gonna scale down the lasagna and the tiramisu just to serve 2, maybe 3 people if that third person's a little one, which makes it doable for a weeknight. To get started, we're gonna make the meat sauce, and that requires 1 small onion, which we're gonna chop finely. And if you have a little one, you chop it really finely so they can't find it in the sauce. And again, to chop an onion, you cut it in half through the root end. That's when I peel it. Then you slice it 3 times, once towards the root, then in half horizontally, and then down into a nice fine chop. All right, that's half. At the end, I always tip the little end piece on its side and really chop around the core. I know, I'm a miser. I don't like wasting anything that doesn't need to be wasted. All right, so let's get this onion going in the saucepan. Over here, I have a small saucepan. I'm gonna put it over a medium heat and add about a tablespoon of olive oil. You wanna get that olive oil hot till it's shimmering just before we add the onion. All right, in go the onions. It's a good sound. We're gonna let these onions go for about 5 minutes until they're good and softened. All right, so while those onions are cooking, let's talk a little bit about the meat in this meaty sauce. Now, the recipe calls for a meatloaf mix, which is traditionally a mix of ground beef, ground pork, and ground veal. And it's already packaged together, which is very efficient. Sometimes you can't find it at the store, or if you don't wanna have veal, I totally understand. Instead, what you wanna do is use half beef, half pork, because it is that combination of flavors that tastes really good in lasagna. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm using 4 ounces of ground beef and 4 ounces of ground pork. So it's a total of half a pound for this little lasagna. All right, ready for the sauce. Ooh, those onions are good and softened and just getting a little brown around the edges, which is perfect. Now time to add just a little garlic. 2 cloves is good. Right through the garlic press, right into the pot. Now the garlic only takes about 30 seconds to saute, just until you smell it. That's pretty good. Next up, the meat. Now I'm just gonna cook the meat for about 4 minutes, breaking up with a wooden spoon until it's no longer pink. All right, the meat is no longer pink and I've broken it up into nice fine pieces. Time to add the tomato. So this is a little can, an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. And to that, I'm also gonna add some diced tomatoes. I love that dual texture of the smooth sauce and the pieces of tomato. So this is a 14.5-ounce can of diced tomatoes. You notice I drained the juices. So I'm gonna add the tomato pieces, and we're gonna add some, but not all of the juice. We're just gonna add 1/4 cup. Into the pot it goes. All right, so we're gonna let this simmer again for about 2 minutes, and it's time to make the ricotta mixture. All right, so here I have a nice big bowl with a tiny amount of ricotta. That's just because I like big mixing bowls. Helps me make a little bit less of a mess. So this is 4 ounces of whole milk ricotta. To that, I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan, 3 tablespoons of chopped fresh basil, 1 large egg, and add a little bit of salt and pepper, about 1/8 of a teaspoon of each. There we go, and you wanna mix this all together. I like to whisk the egg on its own and then mix it into everything else. It's funny, when you're used to making lasagna, you know, it's big batches of ricotta and big batches of sauce, and you're just making a little lasagna, just little batches. It's so much easier to manage. All right, so that's the ricotta mixture. Set that aside, and we're pretty much ready to assemble the lasagna. All right, there is the sauce. Gonna season it with just a little bit of salt and pepper. Now to make a mini lasagna, you need a mini pan, and a loaf pan is perfect because it's the right shape for lasagna. It's got nice tall sides and fits these no-boil noodles just right. You can see it fits right in there. All right, so to assemble the lasagna, we're gonna start with the sauce on the bottom. You want 1/2 cup of sauce right into the bottom of the pan. You wanna smooth it out. That sauce really just helps that first noodle get nice and hydrated in the oven. And these no-boil noodles are wonderful for this because they bake right in the oven. Noodle goes on top. Now we're gonna add a third of this ricotta mixture. I'm just gonna eye it. Let's see, looks like a good third. Right down the middle of the noodle. Spread it out. This is the fun part, the assembly part of this meal. All right, now we're gonna add about a quarter cup of the shredded mozzarella. Now this mozzarella I shredded myself. Try not to use that pre-shredded mozzarella stuff that they sell in the store. It's convenient, but it doesn't melt well because the shreds have been tossed with an anti-caking agent. Sometimes it's cellulose, and that makes them taste a little dusty, and also they just don't melt into that nice gooey cheese that you want for a good lasagna. All right, next up, more sauce, another half a cup. Spread it out a little bit. All right, noodle goes in, ricotta on the noodle. We're gonna make this layering 2 more times, same as the first. Spread it out, quarter cup of mozzarella, and half a cup of sauce. Noodle, last bit of the ricotta, mozzarella, sauce. All right, now we're down to the last noodle. Last noodle goes on top. All right, so it's about a cup of sauce left. You wanna get it nice over the top, and you want a lot of sauce on top so that top few layers of lasagna noodles really do soften in the oven. And they do that with the moisture from the sauce and a little bit from the moisture from the ricotta. Last little bit of mozzarella here. And to top it off, some finely grated Parmesan, about 2 tablespoons. You want the really finely grated stuff here because it melts nicely right on the top. All right, it is ready for the oven. We're just gonna cover it with some aluminum foil. And I've greased this aluminum foil already with some vegetable oil spray. That just prevents the cheese from sticking. Over the pan it goes. All right, this is ready for the oven, 400 degrees, middle rack. It's gonna go in there for half an hour until the sauce is bubbling. Then I'm gonna take the foil off and let it go another 10 minutes. That'll just help brown the cheese on top.
Love our in-depth reviews? Get the latest from our reviews team delivered straight to your inbox. Our well-equipped cook newsletter provides top product picks, no-nonsense buying guides, and must-try recipes. No extra fluff, just the smartest ways to shop, save, and cook. Sign up for free now at americastestkitchen.com/newsletter.
So while that lasagna is bubbling away in the oven, it's time to make the salad that's topped with fried artichoke hearts. I know, it's a little bit of a rich meal, but man, is this salad good. So to make fried artichoke hearts, you wanna make sure you first buy the right artichokes. These are canned artichokes packed in water. Sometimes they're packed in brine. That's perfect, that's what you want. If you can't find those, you can use frozen artichokes, but don't use marinated ones. Those ones will not work here. So I cut them in half, and you see I've been letting them drain on a piece of paper towel. That's because you want them really dry before they go into the hot oil. So this is 3 cups of artichoke hearts that I cut in half, and that's about 2 cans. Now we're gonna toss them with some cornstarch. So there's 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. You just really wanna toss them around, get them nicely coated. That's how they get good and crisp when you fry them. So one time I made this dish, I was rushing a bit. I didn't have a whole lot of time, and I didn't really drain the artichokes well, and I didn't do this next step, which is take the excess cornstarch off the artichokes, and they clumped together in the oil. It tasted delicious, but it was a mess. So definitely take time to do this. All right, so into a strainer it goes, and then you just wanna shake off any excess cornstarch. All right, these are ready for the oil. Over here, I have a cup of extra virgin olive oil, and it's heating up over medium heat. You can see it's shimmering on top, which is the perfect temperature for frying artichokes. So I'm gonna add the artichokes one at a time. They can stick together if you add them all in one big lump. So I've learned 1 at a time is the way to go. Now the recipe just calls for a 12-inch skillet, and in theory you could use any 12-inch skillet you've got, but I've found that nonstick makes it really crisp because the browning sticks to the artichokes and not to the pan. All right, all those artichokes are in the pan. They're gonna cook for about 5 minutes till they're good and golden crisp on both sides. I'll stir them around partway through cooking, which gives us plenty of time to make the vinaigrette. So those fried artichoke hearts are gonna go on top of a simple salad made with arugula and peas. And for that, I'm just gonna make a simple lemon dressing. Here I have a tiny amount of minced shallot. This is 3/4 of a teaspoon minced shallot. To that, we're gonna add a little Dijon, about 3/4 of a teaspoon. There we go. About a tablespoon of lemon juice. That looks good. Pinch of salt. Then we're gonna whisk in about 4 teaspoons of olive oil. Now this is not a lot of salad dressing, but you don't need a lot of dressing because of those fried artichokes are pretty rich. All right, that salad dressing is done. We're gonna set it aside until serving time. All right, time to check on our frying artichokes. You can see they really do stick together. So using tongs and being gentle really helps stay intact while they fry. You can use your tongs to sort of pry them apart. Once you start making these, you will never stop. And in fact, in our house, only about half of them make it to the salad because we're all snacking on them before dinner. All right, those artichokes are looking really good. Time to get them out of the pan. You want to put them on a paper towel lined plate just to absorb some of that extra oil. The little leaves that fall off the outside of the artichoke and fry to a good crisp, those are kitchen snacks. And I like to hit these with just a little bit of salt right when they're out of the oil. All right, now we're gonna let those cool for a bit, and it's time to take the lasagna out. Oh, it is just the cutest little lasagna. And it is also ripping hot at this point. Before you even think about diving into it, you really should let this rest for at least 20 minutes. All right, we'll be back and it's supper time. The lasagna has been cooling for 20 minutes and it's time to put together the entire dinner. Now, here are the salad greens that are going underneath the fried artichokes. And I'm using arugula here, which I love with lasagna. You could also use mizuna. And we're gonna add, oh, hi Ziggs. He smells, the dog Ziggy, yep. You can see his little nose. He's smelling lasagna. He knows it's time. All right, to this we're gonna add a cup of frozen peas that I've thawed. And they just add a nice, fresh, bright flavor to the salad. Here's the vinaigrette. I'm gonna add about 2 tablespoons of it, save a little bit for drizzling over the salad. Toss that together. All right, so there is the arugula and the peas. Gonna put it on a nice platter. That just spreads out the artichoke hearts a little bit. All right, so you can spread out the greens and the peas. Make a nice little bed for the fried artichoke hearts. Now, if you counted, you might notice there's fewer artichoke hearts on this plate than there were when they came out of the oil. And that's because I've been snacking on them as they cool. It's impossible not to. They're delicious. And they would taste good on anything. But on this salad, it's another level. All right, the last few hearts here. Now I'm gonna drizzle with the little bit of leftover vinaigrette, really focusing them on the artichokes. Not a lot of vinaigrette on the salad. You just don't need a lot. The interesting part about this salad is finishing it with a little za'atar seasoning, which is a Middle Eastern seasoning you can sprinkle over lots of things. Just adds a little zing. All right, so about a teaspoon of za'atar, and that's the salad. Here's the lasagna, and it's dinner time. All right, so this lasagna, you don't need to garnish the top, but man, I just can't help myself. I love just sprinkling a little green over the top, just to pretty it up a bit. All right, so I liked the end piece. And you can see if you're really hungry, you could eat half of this. And I've witnessed people doing that, but it's perfect for our little family of 3. So I'm just gonna cut out about a third for myself. Oh, and that is a lasagna dinner. Only thing it's missing is a little bit of Chianti. Now, Chianti goes perfectly with lasagna. Now, Chianti is a blend of red grapes from the Tuscan region, that's the Chianti region. Most of it is Sangiovese. And you think of Chianti in like the old cartoons in the old times, it had that straw-covered bottle at the bottom, which you don't see too often these days. They use regular wine bottles nowadays. And when you're picking out a Chianti, the first thing you want to look for is Chianti Classico, which is an official recognition that the Chianti in here is of high quality. You also can look for this black rooster, the Gallo Negro. This is a sign that it comes from a consortium and they have very high standards. The other thing you can look for is this. It says DOCG. Again, that is a government classification of quality wine. So, time to dig into this lasagna. Oh, I know, it was been resting for 20 minutes. Actually, I had it resting a little bit longer. You can see it's still steaming. The heat just gets trapped in that casserole dish. And if you cut it too soon, all the layers fall apart and slide around. So really important to wait. I love that meat sauce with a combination of pork and beef. It has real flavor. Noodles are perfectly cooked through. The ricotta and the Parmesan inside. Now for a little salad, some arugula, some peas, fried artichoke heart. This salad is perfect alongside this rich lasagna with the peppery arugula and that bright lemon dressing. And if you've never tried a fried artichoke heart, you are missing out. This meal is perfect with a good Chianti. Now there's really only one dessert to follow up a meal like that, and that's tiramisu. You know, the layers of soaked ladyfingers with rum and espresso and mascarpone cheese. Now I'm gonna show you how to make a cute little one that just serves 2 or 3 people.
Are you ready to take your cooking to the next level?
Introducing the complete America's Test Kitchen TV show cookbook.
Featuring every recipe from every episode of America's Test Kitchen. That's thousands of recipes. That texture is unbelievable. Reviews
Gadgets you didn't know you needed.
and tips.
Yes, there's some terrible choices, but there are also some amazing choices.
We've spilled all of our secrets and included our insider notes alongside each recipe.
Plus, there's a handy shopping guide, so you know exactly what to grab when you're at the store.
And of course, it makes an excellent gift. Get your copy today at americastestkitchen.com.
Tiramisu is a layered dessert with some dried ladyfingers that are soaked in a potent combination of strong coffee and a little bit of rum. Then you have this creamy mascarpone layer that has some yolks, some sugar, and a little more rum. So it's like a pick-me-up. All right, so to get started, we're gonna make the dipping mixture for the ladyfingers. And so here I have 2/3 of a cup of water. And most recipes call for strong coffee, and then you make it even stronger by adding espresso. But because we're making a mini tiramisu, we're just gonna use all espresso powder. And the instant espresso powder, you can find at pretty much any market, and it's great to add to any chocolate dessert. It just makes chocolate taste chocolatier, but it's also crucial in tiramisu. So we need 2 tablespoons. To that, we're gonna add a tablespoon of dark rum. Oh, coffee and rum. You can smell it in the bowl. Just gonna whisk this together. All right, that is the dipping mixture for our ladyfingers. Next, we're gonna make the creamy component, which starts in a big old bowl. We're gonna start with 2 yolks. So the creamy component is mascarpone yolks, a little cream and sugar. Starting with the yolks, you wanna get them broken up and get them a little fluffy to start. So I'm gonna start it with a hand whisk, but eventually I'm gonna use an electric whisk just to help things really come together. So 2 yolks, wanna break them up. All right, to this I'm gonna add a pinch of salt and a 1/4 cup of sugar. You wanna whisk the sugar in. There we go. Now I'm just whisking this until it's nicely incorporated and starts to look a little fluffy and lighter in color. All right, next up, we're gonna add a tablespoon of rum. A little rum goes a long way in this dish. All right. All right, now time to add the mascarpone cheese. And you want 8 ounces of mascarpone, which is handy because they come in 8-ounce packages. So an entire package. All right, here's the mascarpone or mascarpone. I mispronounce mascarpone, Worcestershire sauce. There's another one. Notoriously mispronounce those things, but it's my house, so I can say it however I want. All right, so now to incorporate the cheese into the egg yolks, doing it by hand requires a little bit of muscle, so I'm gonna use an electric mixer. And this is handy because a stand mixer would just be too big for this small amount of food. We're just gonna incorporate it till it's nice and smooth and there's no chunks left. All right, that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna add some whipped cream and we're gonna mix the whipped cream into the mascarpone. And again, why use an electric mixer when a hand mixer does it even faster? I've actually timed myself. I can do this twice as fast as that mixer. It's such a small amount. Now the cream is cold, that helps. I have a really good whisk, a balloon whisk. That means it's shaped like a balloon at the end. That's for good whisking. And my method is just going back and forth. And by going back and forth against the bowl, you'll whip cream so much more quickly than if you go circulates or around and around the bowl. All right, so you just want to whip it to a nice stiff peak. And there you go, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to take a third of this whipped cream mixture and stir it into the mascarpone. All right, now I'm going to take the rest of the whipped cream and fold it in. So that first batch of whipped cream just helps to lighten up the heavy cheese so that you can retain some of the lift in this nice whipped cream so it's not so dense. You just want to fold it together till there's no more streaks. All right, we're ready to assemble. So set that aside. Because we're making a small tiramisu, you need a small dish. This dish is a standard Pyrex size and it is perfect for this. All right, ready to assemble. And here are the lady fingers. So they're not fresh lady fingers like you'd find at the bakery. They're dried, they're hard. And this is exclusively what you use to make tiramisu. This is also called Savoiardi. If you ever see that on a package, that's what you're looking for. All right, so taking a lady finger, you're gonna drop it into this liquid, this potent coffee rum liquid. Leave it for there about 3 seconds, and you put it in the dish. So you want the lady fingers to make a nice even layer, and sometimes that means breaking off small pieces so they fit into the dish. I make this a lot, so I know the last one on this layer needs to have a little bit taken off the edge. All right, there we have a nice even layer. Now I'm gonna add half of this creamy mascarpone mixture. That's good, that's about half. Now you want to spread it out evenly over the soaked lady fingers. All right, last but not least, we're going to do a dusting of cocoa on top of that mixture. For that, a little sieve like this, a little strainer is perfect. You only need about a tablespoon of cocoa for the whole thing. So about half a tablespoon in there. You want to shake it over the top. All right, time to make a second layer. And really how many lady fingers you need really depends on the shape and size of your dish. All right, time to add that second layer of the mascarpone. Spread it out nice and even. Topped with a little more cocoa. And this is unsweetened cocoa, which is another reason why I like this dessert. It's just not too sweet. There was just a little bit of sugar in with the mascarpone. So the key to this dish is letting it sit for at least 6 hours in the refrigerator. That just lets those lady fingers soften a bit more, let those flavors marry. You want to cover it, and that's another reason why I like this standard Pyrex dish. It comes with a lid. So into the refrigerator at least 6 hours, but you could do it up to 24 hours in advance. This tiramisu is ready to taste. And now you can see it's a small tiramisu, but it can feed 3 to 4 people, I'd say. And because it's very rich. So I'm just gonna pull out just a piece for myself, although it's a sizable piece. Now that is a perfect piece of tiramisu. You can see those lady fingers soaked up some of the moisture and they almost turn back into cake. You don't have to do this, but grating some fresh chocolate over the top is just fun. It's perfectly with coffee or a little sambuca if you're in the mood. That little zing of rum goes a long way. It's light, it's airy, it's not too sweet. Perfect tiramisu. See you next time. If you're ready to take your cooking to the next level, head over to americastestkitchen.com and get a free trial of our ATK Essential membership. While you're there, you can sign up for our free email newsletters and download our app. So, what are you waiting for?